something fierce. Flew down to Miami to join my team, and this Miami Dolphin team was an expansion football team, which meant they had gathered all the other older players from other teams up and comprised this new expansion football franchise. It had been around for 1 or 2 years. And they were practicing in Boca Raton, Florida, and I went to the Chicago All-Star game, so I was 2 weeks late for practice. When I arrived in my new limousine and my Nehru suit, I burnt orange Nehru suit with a bell-bottom pants. And I got out of the limousine at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon at training camp and walked up to the dining hall, and the players were coming out, these 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year veterans of the American Football League were walking out. And of course, just like the school bus, first day of school, there I am. I wasn't carrying flowers, I was one. And I stepped up, and back then they hazed you pretty good when you were a rookie. And the biggest, baddest Dolphin walked out, and his name was Ray Jacobs. He was an offensive tackle from Corsicana, Texas. And outside of Frank Howard, a fellow that coached at Clemson years ago, was the only man that I had ever met that could chew an entire pack of Red Man tobacco in his jaw, dip an entire tin of Skull under his lip, eat grits and talk to you all at the same time. And this hulk of an individual stepped up in front of me, representing the toughest guy of the Miami Dolphins. Perhaps in the whole history of the Dolphins, this man represents the toughest Dolphin ever. Stepped up and right in front of me and was looking at me. And of course, I flashed back to the school bus and knew immediately the only plan of attack here is straight ahead. Because if you run, they'll just catch your ass, beat you up anyway. So I stepped right up in front of him, and I thought, I'll try to be nice. I said, "Excuse me, my name's Csonka. I'm the first-round draft pick. Could you tell me where Coach Wilson's office is?" And Ray, being a 14-year defensive tackle, gave me his most intelligent reply. He said, "Huh?" And a big red man bubble ran down his chin and dropped over the I in Miami Dolphins on his T-shirt. And I thought, I'm in real trouble here. But I never showed a thing on my face. I just doubled up my fist and leaned back on my heels and thought, I'm going to get one shot here. I've got to deliver a blow right between his eyes. It's going to take him out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to run all the way to Ohio. And I doubled up my fist, and I was concentrating just like a focused gunfighter. I'm focusing right between his eyes, and I got looking, and I noticed there were little funny marks between his eyes, like other people had done that to him before. And I thought, I better give him one more try, because I wondered where those people were now. I thought, I'll give him another shot. I said, "Excuse me, my name's Csonka. Could you please tell me where Coach Wilson's office is?" And he just grinned. And I knew right then I had to make a move. As he spat tobacco juice all over my new patent leather boots. So I rocked back on my heels, and I lunged forward. I planted my heels right up on those big scarred knees of his, reached up on each side of that big cement blocked head of his, grabbed those lamb chop sideburns, and kissed that sumbitch right on the mouth. I don't like Red Man tobacco. But in a locker room with 50 men and 4 shower heads, you're looking at a rookie that had the locker room all to himself for 3 days. It took them 3 days to figure out I wasn't as light in my tennis shoes as I'd let on. And then all hell started to break loose. Remember when I told you the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, and what that meant on a football field? Well, they were bigger than I. They were stronger than I. They were faster than I. Man, they had one other thing. They had experience. That's something you don't run into much in high school and college. But in the pros, it means a lot. They had experience. They knew where to go and when to go. I started to get knocked down. My life in the NFL, just in training camp with the Miami Dolphins, was not at all going the way I wanted it to go. I started getting knocked down every time I touched the ball. If I tried to block for my teammate Jim Kick, I got knocked down. It became apparent to me that perhaps I had picked the wrong profession when I started getting knocked down trying to get in the huddle. I was questioning whether I wanted to stay, whether I had what it takes to be a running back in the NFL, whether in fact I had the internal fortitude to become a Miami Dolphin. Riddled with insecurity. I got up in the morning, went down to breakfast, and there before me in line was a guy that had been the first-round draft pick the year before, a guy named Bob Greasy, fair-haired, blue-eyed boy from the Great Western Plain, gone to Purdue University, almost won the Heisman Trophy, lost out to Steve Spurrier by 1 vote, something he's never forgiven Steve Spurrier for. He was drafted the year before. Here's a guy, I'd see him in practice. If players bumped him or something, they tried to catch him before he hit the ground. If he did get knocked down, they picked him back up and dusted him off. If the ball got a little muddy, they dried it off and gave it to him, a new one. And I thought, here's a guy that knows something that I don't. He was a first-round draft pick last year, just like I am this year. I should ask him. So I stepped up to him. I said, Bob, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been getting knocked down a lot lately. He said, yes, I have, and I wish you wouldn't stand so close. I said, Bob, I can't figure it out. I don't know if I have what it takes to be a Miami Dolphin. I just poured my whole heart out to him right there in the breakfast line. He said, Zon. He said, these are very heavy questions. You can't ask me questions like this in a chow line and expect me to. He said, let me think about this today. Perhaps I have an answer for your dilemma. But come and see me 5 minutes after curfew tonight, 11:05 after lights are out. Come up to my room and we'll talk. Oh, I couldn't wait. Went through another horrible day of practice. Lay in there in my room waiting. They turned the lights off. It said curfew. Went up and knocked on his door. He opened his door and stood before me there in his paisley jammies. Quarterbacks wear those. He said, come on in, we'll sit down and talk. I think I have a solution to your dilemma. We went and sat down. He said, Zonk, I can't tell you whether you have what it takes to be a player in the NFL. I can't tell you whether you have the internal fortitude needed to be the fullback for the Miami Dolphins. But what I will do for you because I like you, and he smiled, is this Saturday night, in our first exhibition game in the Orange Bowl, I will call a play called the double whammy trap. And I will give you the ball to run up through the middle of that NFL defense. When I turn around to hand you the ball, you and I will be eyeball to eyeball. And as I hand you that ball and you're about to take it and run up through the gut of that NFL defense, I will know by the look in your eye whether you have what it takes to be a running back in the NFL. That's the moment of truth. That's when it all comes down to this way or that way. It'll all be right there in your eyes. If you like it, look forward to it. If you're geared for it, you'll have what it takes. Oh, I like the challenge. I like the sound of that. That's that moment of truth in sports, whether it's a race with automobiles, whether it's sprinters at the start of the gun. It's that moment that's pure competition, whether you're into it and looking forward to it or whether you're shrinking away from it. Oh, I like that idea. I got up and shook his hand so hard his paisley jammies bounced. I walked off down the hall in the darkness, already looking forward to this Saturday night, and I heard him chuckle. And I wondered about that. You see, in Bob Greasy's infinite wisdom, he had neglected to tell me the name of the team that we were playing that Saturday night in the Orange Bowl. They were called the Chicago Bears. Yeah, I hear the murmur. Even now, it's not safe to say that name. You never know where he's at. They had a middle linebacker, a guy named Butkus. I had heard about him, seen him on TV. 6'4", 260-pound middle linebacker. Rumor had it the assistant coaches from Chicago had gone up to the Illinois Piney Woods and captured this guy. They put him in a cage and brought him back and put him down under the catacombs in Soldiers Field. And thrice a week they'd go down and prod him with sharp sticks, feed him raw meat, and show him pictures of running backs. And they told him that those running backs had said derogatory things about his mama. Saturday night came. I was so excited, looking so forward to it. I went down to the stadium 3 hours before game time, took my new pickup truck down there, parked it, Got out and went into the stadium. I had all my relatives had come down. The Orange Bowl holds, back then probably 77,000 people. All 300 of my relatives were there already. They're all eating hot dogs and drinking beer on my account. I walked in, the only guy in the stadium. They applauded. I went over, said hi to them, said, I got to go get dressed. They said, oh yeah, go put your uniform on. We want to take pictures. I went in and sat down in front of my locker, no one else in the locker room, opened my locker, and that's when I realized the Dolphins' colors are aqua and orange. I was amazed. I put on a pair of bright orange pants and put on an aqua jersey, picked up my white football helmet with a picture of Flipper on the side, put it on and walked outside, and all my relatives went, woo, boy, look at you. Looked like something that should be blowing up balloons in the Columbiana Fair. I went over and was standing next to them. Pretty soon I'm swigging the beer and eating a hot dog too. I just can't take it. And then the Chicago Bears came out. This is my first game ever in the NFL. They turned the lights on the stadium. Other people had come in. We had a crowd, 6,000 strong. The Chicago Bears came out of their locker room, came running down past me, all dressed in black. I'm standing there in my aqua and orange uniform, and they're pointing at me and talking about tearing appendages off my body and putting them back other places. And I'm there in my aqua and orange going, hi. They ran out on the field. Then the Dolphins came out. They didn't look so big or so fast or so strong anymore. All dressed in aqua and orange, looking like a parade. Came over and I was on the sidelines. They called for the kickoff. Lined up, I'm standing right there on the 50. First professional football game ever. I'm standing right there in my uniform watching. We lined up to kick off, to receive. Chicago Bears lined up to kick off. Kicked the ball high up in the sky, up in the lights and the cigar smoke. Came down in our end zone. Little defensive back named Bobby Neff. White boy from Louisiana. Caught the ball in the end zone and ran it all the way out to the 50-yard line, right in front of me. The 50-yard return, first time I'd ever seen an NFL return, right in front of me, and nearly died right there. Oh, man, I never seen anything like that. In junior high and high school and college, when they blew the whistle, the play was over. In the NFL, that's when it starts. Man, one Chicago Bear grabbed a hold of his head, turned it almost around backwards. Another guy's trying to poke his eyes out with his fingers. Third guy bit a chunk out of Bobby Neff's ass about that big. He screamed, "Wah!" I'm looking right at him. I heard my mother distinctly call my name back in Ohio. I turned to go, and Bob Greasy's standing right there. He said, come on, it's time. I said, time for what? Did you see that? He said, don't let that bother you. Come on out and get in the huddle. Went out and got in that little oval huddle. Everybody's standing around in that huddle. Let me tell you something, folks. People get in that huddle. There's not a lot of nuclear physics being discussed in that huddle. Let's just leave it at that. I'm down at the end, because I'm a running back. They're going to hand me the ball, and it doesn't matter what they diagram on the ground, draw on the dirt. They give you that ball, you're going to go right or left. You know, one way you're going to the Hall of Fame, the other one you're going to surgery. Make up your mind, you know. I got down and leaned on my knees like the rest of them looking. And I looked down there at Bob Greasy, the only guy in that huddle that's smiling. And he's looking right at me. And he's got this funny little kind of Mona Lisa-like smile on his face. I thought, why is he smiling like that? And he's looking right at me, and he calls a play. Double whammy trap on two. Ready, break. Boom. Goes out and gets under center. Hut one, hut two. The ball snapped. Greasy turns around and reaches out. And just like he said, he and I are eyeball to eyeball. He's reaching out to hand me the ball. And as his shoulder goes down, I look over his shoulder at one of the most terrible things any running back in the NFL could ever see. I see my two offensive guards pull and start to go up in on the double whammy trap, and they run into each other and fall down. And there, coming unmolested up through the middle, is this guy Butkus. looking like a foul soul bursting from the bowels of hell, fire and brimstone shooting from his mouth and his eyes, little beady bread eyes. And I look back at Greasy, and it dawns on me, I've been set up. I don't know what Bob Greasy saw in my eye, but so help me, if I live 200 years, if I live long enough to be introduced by Willard Scott twice on NBC in the morning on different Smucker's bottles, trust me, I'll never be able to tell you the look in Bob Greasy's eye when I gave the damn thing back to him. Strange as it may sound, Dick Butkus and I are kind of close buddies. I'm the only guy that ever gave him a quarterback. Now, when you hear Bob Greasy calling games on the NFL, you'll understand why his voice is a little higher now than it was. Things went kind of amok. You know, for many years, from 1968 till 1970, we had great personnel on our team. We acquired different people: Nick Bonacani, Paul Warfield, Mar Fleming, Jim Mandich. The list goes on and on. Jim Kick. Defense, Bill Stanfield, Manny Fernandez. We had great personnel. All those folks were there in 1969, but we only won 2 games. And then in 1970, we had a new guy come in. We had a guy named Shula. And he put us all in a room and said, fellas, we got the personnel here to do this thing. All we have to do is rehearse it better. We have to know what we're doing on a field. We have a little thing called the winning edge, and that's reminding yourself every day that you want to be the best. Not just one of the best ever. And I'll spare you all the details with that. It was pretty self-explanatory. His idea of a winning season wasn't to win and just get to the Super Bowl. His idea was to go for perfection, to do it all. He said that from the first day he arrived until the day it happened. We worked hard. When we got there, we had only won 2 or 3 games when he got there. We turned it around that first season, went 10-4, went out and lost in a playoff game to the Oakland Raiders, where I met a fellow named Ben Davidson, 6'7", big handlebar mustache. I remember Ben very well because up until that point in my life, I had never been picked up by my Adam's apple before, ever. He showed me that it could be done. Came back, Shula rededicated our cause in 1971. We worked even harder. Went through the regular season, went 12-2, got into the playoffs, played against the Kansas City Chiefs in the longest game ever played up until that point in time. We played 6 quarters in Kansas City. They had been to the Super Bowl 2 years before and had won, and they wanted to go back one last time before they reached retirement age, which many of them were. And they were fighting hard. We played them in War Memorial Stadium before they even had the old Arrowhead that was just torn down before the new one was built. We played them, both teams, on the same side of the field. I was never wild about field goal kickers, and I'll tell you a little story about this game. It went on for 6 quarters in the mud, the blood, and the beer. We'd score, they'd score. Went into overtime, went into the second overtime. They had a defensive end named Buck Buchanan, 6'7", 309 pounds. Back then, there was a thing called the head slap, was legal. Buck had a size 19 hand, and he slapped me, head slapped me when I went up to blocking. He slapped me so hard on the side of the helmet that it broke my chin strap. My helmet spun on my head. And I was actually looking out my ear hole, made my ears ring. I went back to the huddle. I couldn't even hear what Bob Greasy was saying because my ears were ringing, just like a heavyweight knockout punch. We've been playing football for some 5 or 6 hours, it seemed, in the mud there in Kansas City. I had lost 18 pounds in that game, holding up my pants with my left hand, trying to keep my helmet straight so I didn't have to look out my ear hole all the time. And we got the ball. Bob Greasy started to call a play, and Coach Shula called timeout. And he came out and got in the huddle, and he said, boys, do you know what's happening to you? And I thought, I damn sure know what's happening to me. I'm holding up my pants and looking out my ear hole. Those guys over there are kicking the hell out of me. That's what's happening. He said, you're up against a better team. He had never before said that, not once. In the 2 years we had been with him, he had never said anyone else was better than us on a football field. He said they are bigger, they are faster, they are stronger, and they're more aggressive. Now, what do you do when you're up against that kind of circumstance? And I thought, surrender. But I didn't say anything. He said, you use all of that against them. And I thought, how can we use bigger, faster, stronger, and more aggressive against them? He said, we'll trick them. Oh, yeah. Let's trick them. Let's all leave.